Lately I've been thinking about this life and how it brought me here. Staring at this man in the mirror, I see him often here. Wipe my tears, only if you knew what I was going through. Only if you walked it in my shoes. Certain things don't like to talk about, but I'll always remember. The chaos in my mind turned my heart out in November. I'm surrounded by too many.
Welcome back to the Message of Hope podcast, where the hope stands for hearing other people's experience. My name is Adam.
My name is Mike.
Today, we have Dr. Fillmore Smiley with us. How you doing, doctor?
Good, thank you.
All right.
So let's start at you're in recovery, right?
Correct.
And you are also a doctor.
I am.
So
PhD in clinical psychology.
Okay.
awesome. So we want to we usually start out by saying like how'd you grow up?
I grew up in a small town in Colorado called Erie, and I was born back east, but I grew up in a home where we were poor, mostly because my dad spent all the money on alcohol and drugs. I grew up. I was a scared kid. They said I was shy, but really, as years went by, I learned that I was just afraid. I grew up in a world that I found to be unpredictable. My dad was, the best way to reinforce behavior is with intermittent reinforcement. So sometimes he was nice, but then every once in a while he'd be really mean. I was thinking about it on the way over here. He was like, he'd yell sometimes, but he didn't really have to yell, because, a few times a year he'd, pick me up and like throw me across the room or whatever. My dad didn't spank. He would punch or, slap or throw. A lot of throwing, picking up and throwing and stuff. So if he just kind of gave me that look, I would like shrivel. And, it's kind of that don't speak unless you're spoken to kind of thing. And I think I learned early on that, the world was a dangerous place. I often think about like when I first became an addict, and I always thought it was when he committed suicide when I was 19.
Right.
But looking back, I think that I don't know if I was born an addict. There was definitely a genetic predisposition. I come from a long line of drinkers. But, right from the beginning, there was trauma. As early as I can remember, there was trauma. I lived in great fear all the time. I didn't know, to step left or right, what my dad was going to do. I remember, some days I'd walk in the door and he'd like give me a smile and say, "Hey, Phil," and little Phil's what they called me. I hated it. But some days he'd just give me that look, man, and I would just shrivel up and just like run to my room, basically, But it was always like that right from the beginning.
And I also think, and it's funny that you bring that up, because like I remember getting clean and figuring out like I always had this like built up anxiety, right? Like even like still like being in San Bernardino or like in rough neighborhoods, and I would see people get in fights and my stomach would turn. I would feel sick. And what it was for me, it was a reaction to PTSD. And you hear PTSD and you think, oh, that's for war vets, that's for people who, but the truth is when you live in a hostile environment like that as a young kid, it creates something inside of you that's really hard to shake. And it's only, for me, my process was recovery, the 12 steps, that's what really got me into a place where it doesn't affect me as much, but I can still see it in my life when people want to leave me or just all that stuff, and so.
It's an ongoing battle, and I think that, there's post-traumatic stress disorder and then there's complex PTSD as well. And what happens is, there's the traumatic incident, and then it happens again and again and again. We see it with victims of domestic violence or people who are in war, where there's a traumatic incident and then they don't have time to recover from it before there's another traumatic incident. The acute trauma piles on top of the post-traumatic trauma, and it just grows and grows. So, growing up where I was always afraid, some people from abusive households like grow up and they're like fighters and stuff, I was terrified of fighting, because I knew inside I was like, if I stand up to this person, I'm going to get hurt,
Right.
and I was always timid of fighting. Later on when I grew up and ended up in jail, you have to fight sometimes,
Right.
So the survival instinct kicked in, I think. But, I was a victim of bullying, in elementary school because, kids that are bullies, they can see someone that's vulnerable, right? So And I stood apart. My dad had long hair, so I wanted to have long hair. I had big, thick glasses, and I was good in school. They called me the brain, So kids that were also, came from difficult households, I think, would target me, would identify me as like, oh, there's a potential victim. He's different. He's weak, whatever, and I remember getting chased home from school a couple times. My dad was like, just punch him in the face, man. And like, that was so foreign for me. Like, there's no way I ever could have done that, And, now that I have children, it's, now we know we advocate for our children. We model the behavior that we want them to demonstrate when they grow up, Right. It's not like we throw them to the fire and let them figure it out, Yeah. So now I advocate for my children. But, my childhood was very scary most of the time.
Was your mom in the home?
Yeah, so my mom was there. She was a victim as well. My dad kind of terrorized all of us. The thing with my mom is that, and I only learned this like much later in life. So after my dad died, I kind of like, I would alternate between like putting him on a pedestal and blaming my mom for everything. But that only lasted a short while, right? And then it was like my dad became the scapegoat for everything wrong in my life, right? As I grew up, my mom was this like angelic figure kind of, but in truth, she was harmful and damaging herself, in that she had a difficult childhood herself. She doesn't remember her childhood because of the trauma that she endured from my grandfather, who had polio and was in a wheelchair. And when he ended up in his wheelchair, he got very, very mean. So my mom has an attachment disorder. I can't think of the name of it off the top of my head, but it's an attachment disorder where you bond well with like animals and like acquaintances, but you don't bond with the people that most people bond with. So, there was never like a real attachment between me and my mom. So not only am I like growing up in this sort of dangerous environment, but I don't have role models, right? There's no role model for love. My parents never said I love you to each other. They never said I love you to me, right? Never once in my whole life. Maybe my mom did when I was a little kid, but I don't remember. But my dad never said I love you. There was no affection. I didn't have role models for any sort of adaptive functioning at all, and then couple that with all the antisocial messages I got from my parents. We have secrets. There's marijuana growing in the garden. We don't tell anybody because the government says it's bad, but you decide for yourself what's right or wrong. Fuck the government kind of thing, And so I grew up with all these convoluted messages, and the bottom line was, it was me against the world. There was no one to count on except me. And, that there was no one to rely on, no one to count on. If I wanted anything done, I had to get it done myself. If I was going to survive, it was just me that was going to survive. So I had pretty severe frustration.
Hold up, Fillmore. It's not reading for some reason.
Oh, okay.
Go ahead.
Hello? Hello, hello?
It was sticking out a little bit. Okay. What's wrong with it? We'll chop it up.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, so you had marijuana growing in the backyard. You had alcohol in the house.
Yeah. I remember my friends too. Well, I wasn't the only one afraid of my dad. We all were. Like any of my friends that would come around, we were all terrified of my dad, So like people that didn't know would be like, like steal weed from your dad. We'd be, are you crazy? Like, he was built like an NFL cornerback. He was like 6 foot, 200 pounds. He worked out all the time. I'd hear him punching his punching bag in the basement. And I'd be afraid, of the guy. He was literally built like an NFL cornerback, and he had a long beard and this really like scary looking pseudo biker hippie fucking guy that, everyone was afraid of. People would like drive down the road too fast, and he would sit in the backyard and throw beer bottles at him, Right. People would come to the door and they'd see him and just leave,
Yeah.
So, everyone was scared of the guy. And I remember a defining moment was it was my 6th grade birthday party, and he told me to be home by dark. And we went to this girl's house that I had a little crush on, me and my friends, and we went there. And I got back right about dark, but he had decided I was too late. And my birthday party, in front of all my friends, all their parents, in front of all their friends, everybody we knew, he picked me up, threw me across the room. I like bounced off the wall. He picked me up and threw me down the hallway and drugged me into my bedroom, and he grounded me for a week, And that's was kind of a seminal moment where, you know, I just decided I hated the guy. It was a year or two after that. Was it then? No, a couple years later, he hit me, and I told him, I went into his shop. He had a little business in the garage, and I told him, you know, if you ever hit me again, I'm going to leave. You'll never see me again. And he just kind of gave me that glare, but he never did, you know. I don't know if I meant it or not, but it was like the bravest moment of my young life, you know. But, you know, so it was this like paradox because he was this cruel, inconsistent, you know, terrible dad, worst husband, but a great friend. All his friends loved him, you know. But at the same time, he was like everything that a man was to me, right? He was strength, right? And he was work ethic, you know. He was fun, all these types of things. And then, you know, fast forward to, you know, I'm at my first year in college, and my mom decides to leave him, and 2 weeks later, he kills himself. He shot himself in the stomach, and he bled out, right? So that was like, everything changed, man, you know? Like, I'm in high school, and like, I was valedictorian in my high school. I was a smart kid. Like, school came easy. I did all these things to like escape from the house, right? So I did track, I did basketball, I did cross country. I was student council, right? Class president. You know, I would join clubs. I would start clubs. I started a chess club. My kids get a kick out of that because only nerds do that, right? And, you know, I did everything to not be home and to get out of that little town and like get away from my family as fast as I could, right? So my freshman year, yet at the same time, I'm like partying a lot, right? I remember coming home from a basketball game my sophomore year, beginning of sophomore year with my best friend Eloy, and like the coolest kid in the school, Jeff Smith, was there with this guy, John Blau, and they're like, hey, you guys want to come party with us? We're like, hell yeah, we want to come party with you. Yeah. And we went over to John's house, and like they gave us a beer and like rolled a joint, and it was like, I've arrived, right? Because that's what men do, right? Based on what I saw. Yeah. Men party, men drink, men do drugs. And I was like, I'm hanging out with the coolest guy in the school, man. And like Eloy and I were like, yeah, man, like they love us, like we're accepted, you know? And then it was like all this antisocial behavior, but at the same time, like they loved getting me high. So they'd be like, dude, I'm getting high with the brain, bro. You know, they thought it was super cool. So I had people, you know, got me stoned all the time. They'd just be like, hey, Phil, come here, man. Let's get high with the brain, bro. You know?
So how old were you when you first picked up a drug?
Well, 15, but every Christmas, my dad would give us a beer, my little brother and I'd make us drink a beer. I don't count that against my clean time. I think that's like counting sexual abuse as my first sexual experience, right. You know? Mm-hmm. Like when he forced me to have beer, like I didn't want to, but he thought it was funny. He thought it was cool, you know, to do that. And I didn't like it. My mom didn't like it, but what was she going to do, you know? But 15, the first time I ever made a choice to drink or do drugs, you know, and it started out, you know, just kind of the little stuff, you know, and I would quit, you know, it's like all of us, you know, it was fun and we have control in the beginning, right? During track and cross country, I wouldn't smoke weed. I'd quit drinking before state qualifying, you know, I had it together pretty well, you know, and then with the I remember during basketball season, not so much, you know, during junior varsity and varsity, I was on C team. My buddy and I would go car to car, like stealing stuff, right? Like I remember stealing a Playboy. I'd steal comic books, you know. I had no barrier to just taking what I wanted, you know, because I had all this antisocial belief, like I want it, it's mine, right? So I would just, you know, we bought off the older kids so we didn't get hazed. We stole out of a cop car one time. A flashlight and whatever wasn't nailed down in a car that was open, we would just steal it, you know. And it wasn't just that, you know. I was always doing antisocial things, man, you know. So and looking like a good kid, you know.
Right. So one thing that's standing out to me so far, right, is the escapism, like wanting to escape, right? So you talked about being on track, you talked about being in the chess club, you talked about all that stuff just to be away from home, right? When you picked up your first drink or your first joint, right, did you feel like you found that escape again? Absolutely.
It was sort of like, it was like a warm hug, man. You know, Gabor Maté talks about that warm hug, man, you know. And it was like, oh, this is it, you know. This is it.
I remember the first time for me, I came home and looked in the mirror the first time I got a buzz, and it was like a warm hug to myself. Like I could look in the mirror and I smiled at myself, and I was okay with who I was, and I had relief for the first time in my life.
Yeah,
I remember that day vividly.
Yeah, no doubt. And it was that, well, I went home and I was all scared, but I mean, everyone was asleep. I just came in for basketball, went there, and now I got away with it too, right? You know, so, and I just figured out, you know, how I could party from there, you know. My buddy would like sneak out of his window. There was no way I was going to do that, you know, but I would just be like, I'm going to spend the night at so-and-so's house. And then we would just, their parents didn't care. So we would just party all night, man, you know. And that's what we did in our little town is we all partied, man. You know, we'd all pitch in on Fridays for a keg and then we'd all go drink. And that's all we did, really. There was no social life in the plains of Colorado. There was no bus that came through town. We had 3 paved roads. We had 2 or 3 police officers. And if you were like a townie, you know, the cops, you know, they just ignored us. They knew where we were, you know. Yeah. My uncle got pulled over doing doing 70 in a 25. The cop pulled him over, put him in the cop car, took him to home, tucked him in bed, picked him up the next morning and took him back to his car and was like, hey, Joe, please don't do that again, you know. But if you were from out of town, no way, you know, that's how it was back then, you know. Yeah. Years later, I got arrested in that town for domestic violence for fighting with my first wife. And I was like telling the cops, no, I'm from Erie. And they're like, dude, oh, you think that you get the townie thing now? It's not like that anymore, dude. You're going to jail, you know. Yeah. Things changed. But, yeah, so my dad committed suicide, and I took off. I had a scholarship to USC. Not all the financial aid was worked out. That's why I didn't go there my first year. At CU, I got paid to go to college. I go to financial aid and get a bunch of money back. I had a job. I was like I thought I was rich, you know. I had a couple $1,000 in the bank. I was like, yeah, man, I'm the shit, you know. I remember after my dad died, though, like, just so much reinforced that notion that I was different than everybody else. You know, I'd walk through campus and look at people and think, how can you be so happy? Like, don't you know how I suffer? Right? Don't you know what's going on? How dare you be happy when I'm hurting so bad, you know? And, you know, I made it through. I took off, came to California, and just, you know, started new all by myself, basically. I came out with 2 friends, but no one from Colorado that ever came out stuck out here except me. Right. And I kept going, you know, and I like, so shy. And then I was tired of not having female companionship. So I taught myself like how to talk to girls, basically. Because again, I didn't have role models for that, you know, like there was no romance or anything going on. I had a friend named Lee that kind of taught me everything I needed to know about women, you know, and what he taught me was conquest, right? What makes you a man is like taking them down, the hunt, you know, get as many as you can. And so I had these convoluted ideas about, you know, male-female relations too, you know. I had no idea of how to be faithful. I was never faithful in a relationship until I got clean. You know, I had a college sweetheart, and I was never faithful to her, you know, because I'd never been able to get girls before, you know, and all of a sudden I'm like getting girls, and I was just whoever. I had a friend, roommate named Tim, and he was gay before he knew he was gay. And he had like all these female friends that would come down from Modesto, and he'd be like, so-and-so's coming down this weekend. I'd be like, oh yeah, you know, because I had sex with most of his friends, you know.
So you kind of went into like a transition, right? You went from being the brain, right, to kind of being the cool guy.
I was trying.
In college.
Yeah,
right?
I was always trying, you know. I joined a business fraternity. A friend in my dorm turned me on to it. And I only got in because I talked to one lady who advocated for me. I still had long hair, you know. I didn't look like a business student, you know. But I got into the business fraternity, and that gave me a life, you know. Some of those guys are still my friends, of those people. Of course, in my addiction, I took advantage of every single one of them. Right. Every single person that ever loved me, I took advantage of, usually for money. I'd hustle them out of money somehow. I traded my good reputation for drug money again and again and again, you know, when it came down to it. But, you know, I barely graduated from USC. I was smoking pot all day, every day, and partying all the time. And I wasn't going to class, only when I had to. You know, and I barely squeaked by, and I got out with like really no idea what to do. But part of like growing up, like embattled, right? And thinking it's me against the world and I can only count on myself, as I had this bravado. I don't think now, looking back, it wasn't real confidence, but I had this bravado that I could accomplish anything I put my mind to. So I got out of college. I found this small company with a good idea that was growing. A couple of years later, we divorced. I started my own business. I was like 23 when I started a business. And I was just like, it didn't occur to me that I couldn't do it, right? I was just like, oh, I'm just going to do it because I'm incredible and I can do anything I want to do, you know? But at the meantime, I'm also very lonely. I was living in Hollywood and I never saw my college sweetheart. I was very lonely. I could walk down to Hollywood Boulevard and get a blowjob for $5, you know? And I at that time, didn't understand prostitution and sex trafficking and all that stuff. I was just like, you know, I'm going to get mine, basically.
It's a good deal.
Yeah, I'm telling you, you know, that's how, right? And that's how desperate they were to get high, right? I didn't realize at the time, you know, that they're just trying to get high too, you know?
So during, all the way up until this point, was it only weed and alcohol?
So at the very end of high school, I started experimenting. So my dad's friends, like, they were all kind of hippie people. And as a graduation present, one of them gave me 7 grams of mushrooms.
Okay.
So my friends and I I didn't like mushrooms, but I did it twice just to make sure. You know? Once, hated it, bad trip. Tried it. You know what? I'm going to try it again just to make sure. But I was dropping acid and I would do ecstasy whenever I could get my hands on it. And after college, you know, I'm living in Hollywood. I don't remember the first time I smoked crack. I remember the feeling. Right, but I don't remember the exact first time. And somehow, some way, because I'd go for a walk thinking I'm going to get in trouble tonight, you know, and I'd end up with, you know, homeless people, couples partying, doing whatever, you know, and then I don't remember the first time that I smoked crack, but I remember how it felt, and then I was just so ashamed, right, the next morning. Oh my God, how could I do that? Right. 2 or 3 months later, I'm going to go get in some trouble tonight, you know. And I would always, right, we think we have reasons, but we have excuses. It'd be like, oh, my college sweetheart, oh, she hurt my feelings, so I'm going to go get a prostitute, you know.
Right.
I go, oh, I need to, you know, I'd like to say I'd go get drunk, but I drank all day, every day. Not all day, every day at that point. I was smoking pot all day, every day, but I was drinking whenever I got home from work, right? And I would just drink and I'd smoke pot until I fell asleep. I was smoking so much weed then, you know. That song, smoked 2 joints, but I was doing more. I'd roll out of bed, I get high, take a shower, get high on the way to work, take a break, get high. At lunch, come home and get high. In the afternoon, I get high, right? On the way home, I'd get high, and then I get high until I passed out. I wake up in the middle of the night and I get high. It's the only time I felt okay was when I was high, right? From the time my dad committed suicide to the time I got clean, 16 years, unless I was in jail, if I was awake, I was high, period. I was on something constantly. I was never, ever not high, ever, all the time, constantly, from the moment I woke up to the moment I fell asleep. But in the meantime, I'm like pretty functioning and, you know, I look pretty shiny on the outside still, right? I started this business, which is to me, I had some partners, they shit on me. They tried to take my name anyway, but I ended up coming out on top. You know, they went out of business and I took all the clients back, and I like had this little freight forwarding business. And it just was me. And I grew up to the point in 3 or 4 years where I had 15 people working for me. I had this little, like, cool little company, and I thought I was the shit, man. I had bought myself a sports car.
There you go.
You know, right? And I was like, women, all of a sudden it was a little bit easier to pick up women, you know? And I was like, again, it was not true confidence. It was bravado, because inside I was so empty and so alone, you know? And after my college sweetheart and I broke up, there was a time that I went down to get a couple prostitutes on Alvarado Street, and I got kidnapped. And I had to, like, get 24 hours. I was kidnapped, you know. But my employees, they would never, like, I would just disappear sometimes, right? So I'd just be like, I'm gonna go smoke crack, and then, you know, 24 hours later, I'd like come down and get it together. So I would just not go to work sometimes, you know.
Yeah.
And whatever, I had people I had hired to, you know, they're gonna do the work for me, you know. And then so I got kidnapped one time, and I met 2 girls. About a month later, there were these 2 women that I picked up in Hollywood, I really wanted to have sex with them, and one of them did heroin. So I tried heroin, and the only time I put a needle in my arm, I overdosed. Saw the doors to whatever comes next, you know, doors to heaven, whatever. I passed out. There was this bright white light, and I kept trying to walk through the door. There were 2 men kept pushing me back, and they're like, "Go, turn around, lay on the floor. When you wake up, you're going to be okay. And I woke up and this woman was on top of me going, oh my God, you're alive, you're alive. And then the paramedics showed up and off to the hospital I went, but they pumped me full of whatever, something, Narcos something. And it made me puke blood for like 3 days, you know?
Yeah.
The ironic part of that is that, of course, I go to the bar to take care of myself, you know? So I go down to the bar and I'm talking to this guy and I go, look, I need to hire a woman to work for me. And he goes, well, do you care what she did before? I go, no, I don't care. I just need someone to show up and do some typing and filing. He goes, well, I got a secretary and a porn star. And I go, I don't care, whatever, just send them over. So this woman came, she showed up. I smelled alcohol on her, but I had hired other reclamation projects before. And I'm like, whatever, as long as she shows up, I don't, you know, I just need her to fucking file paperwork, man, you know? But there was something about her. So I hired her in March of whatever year that was, 96, 97. Hired her in March, started having sex with her in April, married her in June, and lost my business the following May. And she's the one who turned me on to speed. So it's not that, you know, I don't like the term drug of choice because that's like saying cancer of choice. You know, it's a disease. Like I'll take breast cancer, please. You know, it's like, I'll take speed, please. You know, it's just, that's the thing that took all the pain away, man. Right. Like all the trauma, all the pain, all the insecurity, all the self-doubt. It took everything away, right? It was so much fun. I never had so much fun destroying my life, man. And it was all for sex. I mean, right? So it turned out, of course, she was the porn star. So she was very talented, you know? Like, and so it was just constant. Like,
She was very talented.
very talented.
She was good at what she did.
Yeah,
She
she
could do-
destroyed your life in a year, bro.
Yeah,
She
it
has
was,
to be
it was
good at
quick. And, you know, in 9 of our first 13 months, we were separated. So if you get a reputation for being decent in bed and you have the dope, well, the women just show up, you know.
Yeah.
So she'd take off. Her friends would show up, friends, air quotes, you know. And at first I'd be like, get out of here. You know, she's not here, you know. And the second or third time she left, I was like, you know what? I'm going to get her back. I'm going to have sex with all her friends, right? Yeah. So then, you know, I'm just, you know, no moral code. I lost whatever moral code I ever had, man, you know. And it happened pretty quick, you know. So her friends would show up and be like, come on in, you know. You can both come in, whatever, you know. And so then, like, I started getting in trouble. The lady from the PUC showed up, you know. I was doing some things I shouldn't have been doing. If I pick it up and pack it and ship it, I could do that. But if I picked it up on the same truck and delivered on the same truck, I'd have a PUC license. I didn't want to bother with that. So every once in a while, people would put in a false claim and I have to pay them off or whatever. And my buddy worked for me and he's like, man, you got to pay these people off. I never did. They reported me to the PUC. They eventually came in and shut my business down. It was very dramatic, right? One day, like 30 cops showed up and raided my warehouse and drugged me away, you know. 10 PUC cops, 10 local cops, 10 drug cops. And they just like raided me, took me away. Of course, there's a lot that happened in between there that, you know, she was physically, verbally, psychologically, mentally abusive, you know. She'd punch, and then I'd punch her back and off to jail I'd go. And not that I didn't initiate sometimes because she'd be screaming and screaming and I'd just be like, bap, you know, it was a co-combative sort of thing. And, you know, I think that's something that a lot of people don't want to talk about in recovery is the things that, the embarrassing or horrific things that we did, you know, and because I thought if I'm going to do that, that's who I am. I didn't think that the drugs or alcohol made me do those kinds of things, right? You know, it's just, well, God, I'm a terrible person now, right? I hit this woman or whatever, you know, but it's not something I would do clean, you know?
Absolutely. And I think that even in recovery, whether people want to talk about it or not, it happens in recovery when we're clean, when, you know, because, you know, one thing I've learned in my journey is that just because I get clean doesn't mean like all that old behavior or all that messed up thinking goes away right away, right? Like I still don't know how to communicate verbally. I know how to communicate with my hands. I know how to let you know I'm pissed off. I could flip a couch. I could break a window. I could do all that stuff. But to communicate verbally is hard for me. And I think sometimes when we don't speak on that thing, on those kind of things, like it actually does more damage for the newcomer, right? Or for the people who are fresh in recovery because we're kind of trying to save face and ass at the same time.
Right. That's why I think the best meetings that I go to are the ones where people are honest.
Yeah,
right?
I love it.
You get these people that think they need to carry a message and like, right, it's, man, just tell the truth, man. Yeah. And like, so for years and years, I was ashamed to like share certain things. Now, whatever, man, you know. I don't have to let the past define who I am today, right? But that's the experience that I experienced, right? And I know that by sharing these types of things, first off, I'm helping myself. It's cleansing, right? It's cathartic, but it's the honest sharing that helped me when I first got clean, and it's, I think, the honest sharing that really helps other people, you know? Yeah, man, I did some stupid shit, right? I did things. Another thing we don't talk about is like same-sex stuff, right? There's a lot of shame involved with that, you know, and some of that stuff happened, man. You know, it's like, fuck, when I smoke crack, let's get naked, right? And when I did speed, right, it's like whatever, like whoever's there, man. It's, and then of course, then you come down and get your clothes back on, and then you never really do anything, right? Because you're just chasing the next high. But with speed too, it was like, come on, let's all get together, right? Yeah, you and you and you and you too, come on, right? And it was just whatever, you know. Especially in times when she and I were separated, you know, that it would just be like, whatever, man, you know, let's just do it. So, and,
I have a question. So when you found yourself in these domestic arguments with probably different women throughout your life, did you, and we talk about this quite a bit, did you feel like when she would be abusive, she loved you? Did it?
I don't know. I think that I had some convoluted ideas of what love was, but I think that you probably have a point there because my dad was so abusive, you know,
Right, that's why
and that physical stuff, right? It's like they say you marry someone like your mom or whatever, but no, she was like my dad. So I think, you know, you're spot on there. And I actually thought about that, right? I think because of the trauma, right? When trauma happens to us when we're children, the world revolves around us, right? So anything that happens is our fault, right? So all that stuff that happened in my childhood and my subconscious, I think it's my fault. So I deserve these bad things that happened to me. That's why whenever good shit was happening, I'd self-destruct. And I've self-destructed clean because if I'm not working a program, I can reset to default, man, you know, and then I start screwing everything up because deep down inside, I don't think I deserve good things in my life because I'm the type of person who deserves to get hit by their dad. I made him hit me, right? Is what a little kid thinks, right? I made him kill himself, right? I made my mom like never touch me or hug me, right? Any of that stuff, you know, it's my fault somehow. So somehow I deserve these things, you know? So I don't think it was like a conscious thing, definitely like a subconscious process. Yes. I found someone who would punish me the way I thought I deserved to be punished, you know? But it was basically her. So, you know, I was with her 5 years and I had promised myself that after 5 years, if things weren't better, I'd get out, you know? And I had it in my head, it was all her fault. Right? Yeah. Everything that happened, losing the business, going to jail all the time, running around from place to place. We went back east. A bounty hunter got me because I jumped bail. And, you know, then I was in Pennsylvania. The next day I'm back in LA County jail. Like, what the hell, man, you know? And it was, of course, everyone else's fault, you know? Like, why me? Like, why would they come after me? It was only $10,000, you know? Yeah. There's other people who've done worse things. And you know, why would you destroy my life, you know? It was always someone else's fault. But when I got away from her, like that stuff stopped. And it stopped actually a couple years into it because I just wasn't emotionally attached anymore. Mm-hmm. So she could be like, F you, I'm leaving. And she'd run out and I'd go, whatever. You know, you'll be gone, another one will come along, whatever. You know, go on then, right? And then that's what happened. She left and then I met this like older woman and a couple, I swore I'd never have just one, right? So I had like different friends or whatever that kind of filled that void for me. And shocking, as soon as she was gone, things got worse, right? Because when I was doing speed with her, it was just her and I. It was just me, her, sex, and every once in a while other people too. Yeah. But, you know, so it was just that. And then when she was gone, now I'm in the tweaker world, right? Now I'm in the tweaker life. And I'm running around with tweakers. And I was like, why aren't you people naked, for one? You know, like, why else would you do speed, right? If you're not naked. But they're just like...
You just walked in the room like, why isn't everybody naked already? Aren't you high?
Yeah, exactly. Like, are we not high enough? Like, what's going on here, man? And there's like women like sorting thread and stuff. And, you know, like the weird things that tweakers do, right? Yeah, things got worse and worse.
Coloring book, you know.
Yeah, and so when I shut my business down, they charged me with grand theft, and the lady was like, the public defender, hey, you can beat this, right? Because it was. I mean, there's a lot of stuff I did that I could have gotten arrested for that I didn't. And this I didn't do per se, but I got arrested for. It was like had to do with like the stuff that was left in the warehouse when they took me away, and then it was like, well, you didn't have insurance, yeah, but I put it in a separate account or whatever. But anyway, she was like, look, if you stay in here 30 days, you can beat this case. Or I have to tell you this. You can get out today if you take this plea bargain. I was like, get out today? Hell yeah, I wanted to go get high, right? Yeah. So I took this like no jail plea bargain, and then I'd go to court. And, are you going to show up for court? Oh, yes, sir. Yes, absolutely, Your Honor. Straight past the probation office, right? You're going to show up for probation? Yeah, I'll go see my PO this time, I promise, right? Past the PO's office, right to the dealer's house. So all those years, whenever I had police contact, I get arrested, get thrown back in jail, right? And then he give me another chance. Well, finally, he was like, the public defender was like, look, the judge has a deal for you today, 365 days, then you're off of probation. I went, off probation? Get down. Wait a second, 365 days, that's a year. Who's going to take care of my dog? And she's like, I don't think the judge cares who's going to take care of your dog. I go, well, can I fight this? She goes, yeah. Who's at the hearing? That judge. And he looked at me like this, and I was like, oh, I'll take the deal, right? Because I could have gone to prison for 3 years, for that grand theft. So I ended up doing a year in LA County Jail, which is pretty scary.
Yeah, I've heard. I've never been there. Been to all the other counties.
Really scary. They throw you in like there's 2,000 or 3,000 blocks, and there's these like rooms like about twice this big, and it's just like supposed to be a big storage closet. They have the bunks triple bunked everywhere, and there's no windows. And they close that door, and anything could happen, man. I got knocked out one time. I don't even know why. I just turned around. This dude knocked me out, and he's like, "It's over now, Wood. Go back to your bed." Okay, no problem. Yeah, because they could kill you, and it would not find. They wouldn't find you for 12 hours, and no one's saying anything anyway. In those, so it was scary, and I had to fight. Every time I fought, I lost. I don't know how to fight, but in jail, if you fight, you win, even if you lose. So that had to happen sometimes. So I did a year in LA County Jail, and then.
What was like the worst thing to happen, or that you seen happen while you were in county jail? Because for our listeners, I know you on a professional level and on a personal level, right? And you just don't seem like the kind of guy that would even survive. And because and not because I think you're soft, but because I think you're loving, I think you're caring. I also think you're very intelligent, right? And so in my head, I'm like, how did he survive in there, right?
It's amazing how adaptable human beings are, right? It's amazing how adaptable we are. Plus, I'm manipulative. I'm conniving, right?
Okay.
All these types of
use
things.
The brains part.
Yeah, I would use that. Somehow, always up making friends with the shot caller in the tent. Oh, you're the shot caller? Yeah. Oh, let's play chess, But I'd always kind of, I was able to sort of, and I like to tell stories, and I'd get them laughing and stuff, So I would survive that way,
that for sure.
And I would get around. I think the worst thing that ever happened was at the tail end at LA County Jail, where the deputies would still just kind of take you into it and beat the shit out of you. And I think the worst thing I saw, there was this massive deputy, like 3 or 4 of them, just beat this guy almost to death, and they drug him away, man. So it wasn't really the inmates, really, because with they say the inmates segregate, so you don't. I wouldn't fight a black guy or a Mexican guy, then that would be a big problem, right? So it's only white guys. The white guys didn't really fight because there's only a few of us anyway. Now, sometimes there were riots, but I happened to miss the riots every time. And I ended up getting the trustee, and then I ended up in ODR, and so then I ate real food for
ODR is like the best job there is.
Is it?
Officer's dining room.
Oh, okay.
So you're making the cops their food, big cheeseburgers, and then you get to eat that food too.
Oh, okay.
Hell
I've done
yeah.
that job too.
Yeah, I got the cheeseburger. I got the cheeseburger every day, man. And I was like the waiter, so I'm like bringing the food out to the cops and stuff.
You get real soda. You get all that.
Yeah. So that was pretty cool. And then they released me, and people would be like, "Hey, what are you going to do when you get out of here?" I'm like, "I'm going back to the drugs, the alcohol, to the woman, to the hustle." That's what I'm doing. I never, at that point, I had any compunction about what was going on, Although in my head, I was still a businessman, But I'm like, I'm going back to do the things that I've always done,
And with no tail.
Yeah, well, but then I started getting in trouble in Riverside, So what happened was they finally popped me. I was out in Riverside, and so I had a taking vehicle. I still can't rent from U-Haul. So, because I would rent U-Hauls and I would keep them, right? So, as long as I would rent U-Hauls and keep them. There's a way that it's not a crime, and in LA they didn't care. Like there goes my car, but it was the U-Haul driving away, and I just go somewhere else, get another one, and then I went to Ryder and Budget, and I just when U-Haul, they're like, you owe us like $80,000. We're not going to rent you. I'm like, I'm out of here. Yeah. But
So you
in
use
Riverside
U-Haul as a
transportation. Yeah.
Okay.
Because I still had my little hustle going on. I pick up people's furniture, I pack it, I ship it. I just wasn't paying the vendors either. And I kept changing. I'd go through all 5 vendors, and then I change company names and phone numbers, then I do it again. The hustle dried up because I quit getting referrals because I wasn't paying the referral fee to the people that gave me business. You know, I was too busy getting it. Why would I give them money? I needed it to get high.
Yeah.
Right. So, yeah, I got it. Taking vehicles out owner's consent. They ran that concurrent with my case in L.A. And my last DUI. I had 3, so I did have a tail in Riverside County. Thank goodness, because my probation officer ended up saving my life. She ended up saving my life, man, and it's because things just got worse and worse and worse, and and I wasn't eating, I wasn't sleeping. I would like pass out. I'd get high and still pass out because my body was just depleted, man. And finally, when I got out of LA County, I went and got a little job, moving furniture from a guy I knew in Redlands, and got a little trailer in Yucaipa. And then there was this woman there, and I kind of moved my way right in with her, and then we just, fell apart, just getting really high. And I have a picture of what I looked like when that probation officer came and saved me. So 2003, like August or something, she shows up at the door because I walked in one day and she was like, I hear that you have been getting high and beating up your woman. I'm like, whoa, Cammie, I wouldn't put my hands on a woman. She's like, I don't believe that, but I do believe that you've been getting high. And I was about to go into this big thing, and she's like, look, check it out. If I test you and you're dirty, but you tell me you're not using, you're going to go to prison. Right? If you tell me you have a problem, I'll get you in rehab. But if you tell me it was like a one-time mistake, I'll test you for a while, and then if you test clean, well, you can just go on with your life. I go, that one. Yeah, that's the one, right? So she had me testing every week, so I'd get high all week. I do green clean, go in there, take the bus, because now I don't have a vehicle, take the bus there, test clean, right? And the male probation officer would be like, I know you're high, and I'd be like, fuck you, I'm not high, And I was, I was really antisocial. I was a total dick. And straight to the dealer's house. I did that again and again. Well, she was smart. She came to Yucaipa and knocked on the door, and I thought it was my buddy who just got out of prison. I opened the door, and it was her. Look at you, Smiley. You're a mess. You're going to jail. And wait, I can explain, No, we can work this out, And she's like, shut up. And my face was picked. I looked like my face was picked all across my forehead, both sides of my nose, across my ears, at least red, bright. I'd been awake for like a week, and off I went. I had little money, and because still my hustle worked every once in a while, but I gave the rest of that money to that woman, and I thought she was going to be a down old lady and like take care of everything, And then so she takes me, and they're going to send me to prison, and I'm like, I'm going to prison, man. I'm down for the cause, whatever that means,
Yeah.
And and then they're like, well, your probation officer said you might want rehab, and I'm like, I don't know. And this I never saw the dude. Like some guy leaned over, right, and said you should go to rehab. And so, and I never saw the guy. Like it's divine intervention, I think now, right? And I was like, you know what, I'll take rehab. And Cammie, the PO, she came in. We're friends now, but she came in and she was like talked him into giving me a program. So I thought, cool. I'm going to get out of jail. I'm going to have like a little outpatient program. I didn't know anything about rehab. Like getting clean was never my idea. It was Cammie's idea, my PO, right? It was her idea to get me clean. I didn't want to get clean. I wanted to trick her and still get high. Right. And it turned out to be a program in jail, right? So off to Banning I went, and I did another county year, but out in Banning. But it was like you'd wait to get in the rehab, and then you'd be in the rehab, and it was called it doesn't matter what it was called. It was out, and I would go and it was like one separate unit for people that were in rehab, Yeah. And so I was there, and like the first month, I was like, I'm just going to say whatever these people want to hear, man, And the second month, I started thinking, maybe I have a problem. Like, I don't have anything to my name. I took advantage of every single person that ever loved me, because I would be like, hey, my car broke down. I need $500. Hey, you know what? I just need this to get going, and or hey, let me borrow this to pay the rent or whatever. It's just I burned everybody. So I finally figured out that I had a problem, and I started applying myself. But then I got an early release from jail accidentally. I got a cataract, of all things, that went down to, took me to Robert Presley jail, and before I could see the eye doctor, they early released me. Right? So I get out of jail, and at the plan I had to go with 2 friends into sober living. That's gone. I don't know where to go. I had like $50 in my pocket, And so I'm like, well, first insane thing was smoking a cigarette. Then I drank a beer. So right away. And I would beat myself up like, man, I was in a program all that time and I got out and drank right away. Well, of course, I had treatment. I didn't have recovery. There's a big difference, right? And I hadn't had a chance to be in recovery yet. I had a beer to think about it. The next day I decided to go to my buddy's house to show him how good I looked. How good I was doing. It's just coincidentally that he cooked speed, right? Just a coincidence. So I just thought I'm going to go to Ukaipa and see my buddy and see how he's doing. And of course now I'm high again, you know. So a week later, he goes to sell dope. I'd been to San Bernardino twice before, both times to get speed. The third time I go is with my buddy, and his friend goes in this like apartment to sell speed, and the house gets raided. So the house gets raided. They drag out this dude and another dude, and then they're like, "Who are you guys?" And we're like, "We're nobody." Well, he had a PAL warrant, a really large warrant, and off he went. I couldn't take my eyes off my dope. He looked through my cigarette pack and didn't find it, but I was so high and I was so in love with speed, I couldn't take my eyes off the speed. He looked at me and looked at her. He goes, "Oh, you're going to jail too." So I've been out a week. I go back to jail, and I'm sitting there, and I'm like, "Really? This is my life now?" Like, I was valedictorian in my high school. Like, I'm special, and I scholarship to USC. I have my own business, right? Present tense still. But yet, how could I have done this to myself? Like, this is who I am now? I'm the kind of guy that gets to be out for a week, and I live in here now? What the fuck, man? I go, I don't know how I'm going to do it or what I'm going to do. I'm probably going to go to prison. Cammie's going to send me to prison. When I get to Chino for the intake or to Hatchview, wherever it was, you know, I'm just going to go and I'm going to tell them I want a program. I'm going to figure this thing out. I had nowhere to go, no money, nowhere to get there. I was whatever. So I ended up getting Prop 36. Again, serendipity, because they called Riverside to see if I could even get the program. And Cammie was like, if they would have got me on the phone, I would have sent you to prison, right? So I get Prop 36, and I met a guy, and it's funny how all these things just align together, right? Serendipity, man. I met a guy in jail who turned me on to a sober living. I had $300 to my name in the bank in Riverside. So I get out that first day. So I get out that night, and I had it March 3rd, 2004, and I had a beer. And now I understand that people get drunk on the way to rehab, right? Yeah. And I have nowhere to go and no way to get there. It's 10 o'clock at night, you know, and I'm walking, and I come to like this like porn place where you put the quarters in or whatever. Yeah. There was a trucker there, and I was like, "Hey man, do you mind if I crash up in your truck?" And he was like, "Yeah, come on up." And he was like, "Look, if you want to stay, I want to suck your dick." And I had so one last time I had to compromise myself, right? Like, what was I going to do? Like, go out back into the night again? You know, so I had to just kind of lay there and let him do it. And it was like one last time, you know, because of my addiction. I had to do something I didn't want to do that was against my morals and values, man, you know. And I slept there all night. And the next day he drove me from Rancho to Highland to the program and dropped me off. I met a drug and alcohol counselor. I had no money on me. She bought me food, and I went to that sober living that night. And I was standing there, and I told him, "Look, I have $300 I can give you." It was $400. And he's like, "I'll take the $3." And I'm like, "Run, go away, run," right? I was going to go to Idaho to stay with my old friend. And I was like, what should I do? You know, and it occurred to me, any life without drugs and alcohol had to be better than the life I'd been living. And I committed my last $300 to my name to this man, right? I smoked cigarettes at the time. I had no cigarettes, no clothes, no more money, no food. I had a roof over my head. That's it for a month. And I had to figure it out, right? My second day clean, I went to, I was looking for probation, and I found parole, and I met this guy, and we got to talking, and he bought me boxers, so at least I didn't have to clean my clothes out at the end of the day, right? Now I had to change the boxers at least, which was awkward to have a man at that time. It was awkward to have a man buy me boxers, you know? And he told me, though, "Hey, man, if you want to stay clean, go to these meetings, and, you know, you can find a sponsor," and, you know, and he told me where to go. I hoofed it the next morning for an hour to get there, and, you know, I've been clean ever since, man, you know? I just started doing what people told me to do. Right. And I was, you know, able to get, I think, TAD or whatever to pay my rent for a while. We don't get well right away. I met a kind of an older woman, you know, and she had some money. Right. And so she like bought me clothes and bought me food until I could kind of get my head on straight. And then I got a job moving furniture. I moved furniture for 3 years when I first got clean, and, you know, got a sponsor and did everything in the program that we're supposed to do, man. They're like, go to meetings, help people, read literature. work steps, all that stuff. I just did it, whatever they told me to do. I'm a smart guy. But what I didn't know how to do was stay clean. And here I am brand new, and there's a room full of people that are like, hey, if you do this, you don't have to get high again. And I did not want to get high again. Right. I didn't. The last thing I wanted to do was get high. I'd do whatever it took, man. And luckily I know how to commit, right? So I was like, I show up to that meeting, and then I go, this guy, Big Rodney, takes me to breakfast. I was hungry. He's like, do you want to eat? Hell yeah, I want to eat, Yeah. And there were these guys there, and they were talking about recovery, like principles, the book, steps, all these different things, right? At breakfast, I'm like, oh, this is a way of life. If this is going to work for me, I have to go all in. Yeah. This isn't something I can half-ass, right? If this is going to work, I got to go all in. And I decided right then and there, I'm doing whatever it takes, man. Yeah. Whatever these people tell me to do, that's what I'm going to do.
Yeah. Because sheer willpower isn't enough, right? You know how many, I've been in treatment multiple times, right? And I'm like, this is it. Like, I am tired. I am tired of getting loaded. I'm tired of losing my kids. I'm tired of having nothing. I am tired. But if those intentions don't have behavior to back it up, then it doesn't matter.
Right.
I always wanted to be a good man. That nobody cares about your intentions. The
Right.
world doesn't care. The universe doesn't care. Like, your intentions are 100% irrelevant, right? It's all about your behavior. What are you willing to do and what are you not willing to do, man? Because I could have my kids right there, and they're telling me, like, if you get high again, you are going to lose them. And somehow I will convince myself that getting high is still a good idea.
Right. I mean, Adam, right, in our line of work, I mean, if I had $100 for every time I heard this, Doc, I don't even feel like getting high anymore.
Yeah.
I'm done. Doc, I don't even feel like I'm done. It's never happening again. And then they either go out and die or they come back or who knows what happens. But, as we know, not a lot of people make it.
Yeah, I've said that a million times too. And I meant it every time.
Absolutely.
That's the crazy part. When you're in that jail cell, you mean it. And then as soon as that gate hits you in the ass, you forget everything you were feeling and what you thought and all the plans that you made. And so when you first got into the program, did the language and the things that people in the program do, did that intimidate you, or did it feel welcoming?
It felt pretty welcoming. Like, I picked up the lingo pretty quick because they were like, do a meeting a day for 90 days. And I was like, okay, whatever they told me to do, I said, okay. People share, I was so willing in the beginning, I'd push a quarter naked down baseline. I thought to myself, that's stupid shit. I'm not doing that. Like, right? But if you tell me, like, do a meeting a day for 90 days, oh, I can do that. They do, like, go to a convention. I can do that, right? Try an out-of-town meeting. Okay, I can do that. Go help somebody without an expectation of reward. Okay, right? So, and they told me, are you working? I go, no, I'm not working yet, man. I'm just trying to figure this thing out, man. Then you should be in a meeting every single moment that you can. Right. Hustle. The way you hustled for your drugs, hustle to get to a meeting, right? So I got phone lists, I started calling around to different people. I'd call and be like, hey, or I'd see them at one meeting and go, hey, you going to another meeting tonight? And they'd be like, sure, we'll pick you up because we want to help people, right? So I would be at the morning meeting was my home group. I went every day, almost every day for 8 years. I went to the same morning meeting. And I'd go at noon. There was a club right around the corner. I'd go at 5 if there was one. I'd go at 7. I'd go to the candlelight meeting on Saturdays if I could. Every single meeting I could hit, I would go. So I did, for the courts, we had to do like 3 meetings a week or something. I was doing 3 a day minimum for the first 2.5, 3 months.
I was still rebellious when I got clean. So they told me to do 3. I was definitely doing more. You know what I mean? I was like, I'll show you that I'm going to do things my way. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? So, but, no one ever had to tell me, like, go to 90 meetings in 90 days. I just was such a wreck, and I couldn't be home alone, and I slept on my aunt's couch for the first year. So it was like, I had to get out of that household, and I love my family, and I'm grateful they offered that couch to me, but they drank and they smoked, and I was like, I need to get out of here, and so it kind of forced me into a position of just going to meeting after meeting after meeting. Where are you going? Let's go hang out there, because I ain't gonna be at home while they're drinking all weekend. Like, I want to go out with you guys,
I was so anxious when they offered me an antidepressant. I turned it down. What they should have offered me was anti-anxiety medication. I was so anxious in the beginning. And the only time that I did not feel anxious was when I was in a meeting. Yeah. So I couldn't sit still. I'd be like, I could not sit still. Right. And they told me, hey, pray. okay, just pray for your higher power to remove your anxiety. And I'd be like, all right, I'll give it a shot. Hey, whoever you are up there, can you take away my anxiety? And you know what? Every day it worked. Sometimes it worked in the morning. Sometimes it was right before I laid my head on the pillow, but my anxiety would go away. And that willingness produced more faith, which produced more willingness and produced more faith, right? When they told me to do certain things, right? I had exhausted every possibility of thinking I could manage my life on my own. So I just did whatever people told me to do. And when I did it and it paid off, I became more willing. And people would be like, hey, why don't you look that word up in the dictionary? I'm not sure if you know what it means. I'd be like, I'm a smart guy. I know what it means. I look it up in the dictionary and go, oh, that's what surrender is. Yeah. Oh, that's what justice means, right? Justice was one of the words I had to look up because I thought it meant punishment, Right. And so I had to look these words up. But, I found a sponsor, a really good dude. I worked all the 12 steps with him. I had that spiritual awakening. It took about a year to work the steps the first time. I'd never felt better, man. Right. I'd never had a feeling like that my whole life, that first spiritual awakening, man. It was incredible. Like, my default is like irritable, judgmental, condescending, people are fucking stupid, like that kind of, oh my God, why are you so stupid? Like, that's my default, know? And then I was just like, okay, whatever, sure, let's do that. Like, because all that mattered, I knew if I did my part, then my higher power would like show me the way. And I never even had a higher power, man, but loving, caring, greater than me, I can get with that, Right. I grew up without religion. I thought religion was a tool to control the masses, right? I thought religion was for fools, only stupid people would go to a church, like right. Those kind of beliefs that I had, And so it's not that I had difficulty finding a higher power because I bought into what people told me, loving, caring, greater than me. I can do that. Now go do a 4th step. Okay, right? Write everything down. Okay. Go try to change your own defects on my 6th step. Okay, well, that didn't work. Really? Well, maybe you need God's help, right? There's that 7th step, surrender, right? Why did you tell me to try to change my own defects, man? It's only making it worse. Can you do it yourself? No. Do you need help from a higher power? Yes. Okay, go pray. Okay, right? And then I learned how to have my defects taken away, And the 8th step, the first time through, was the hardest. Everyone's like, just make a list, just make a list. Well, what about the becoming willing part, man? That was an effort. I was stuck on the 8th step well, then it was a long time, like a whole month or whatever, I was like, oh, I can't do it. What about all this money, And I was like, you know what? If my higher power took me this far, I'm not going to be let down now. I'm just going to do it. And I know everything's going to be okay. And it was. And I just like paid people off for a while. I made payments to like a lot of people for a long time until all my stuff was paid off, man.
So you went to college. What did you go to college for when you were young?
So my bachelor's is in business administration. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a writer when I first got there, and I had a writing professor pull me aside. This is how I ended up in business school. I took a creative writing class, and the teacher pulled me aside one day and goes, "You're not good at creative writing." She's like, "But you are good at structured writing. You should think about business school." I was like, "Oh, okay." So that's how I ended up going into business school. And I still didn't, if I had realized there was an entrepreneur program early enough, I would have applied for that program and tried to do that. But I just did finance because it was like difficult, and I liked a challenge. And when I graduated, I was so high all the time and so lonely and so desperate and so depressed, just deep, dark depression. There's stages of grief, right? And so, right, there was the denial and the bargaining and the anger. And then I got into the depressive phase. That same teacher that told me that I wasn't a good creative writer told me, hey, as awful as it is right now with your dad killing himself, in 2 years it's going to be worse. And I was like, what I said was, well, thank you for that information. What I thought was, you stupid bitch, you don't know how I feel. Right. Yeah. 2 years later, it was so much worse. And by the time I graduated college, so all the top like Fortune 500 companies like line up next to Tommy Trojan at USC, right? And they're like, come work for us, please, But my GPA wasn't high enough. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was scared to go talk to them. But luckily, I worked out finding this company, that I learned how to do freight forwarding. I was able to start my own business. So when I got clean, I moved furniture for 3 years. And then it occurred to me one day, because I was just trying to do the next right thing, man. Yeah. Right? Just do the next right thing. And I met a woman who is now my ex-wife, but she's the mother of my children, right? And I just like, did the next thing, And after 3 years, I was like, maybe I should go back to school. Right? Yeah. And everyone was doing nursing at the time, so I would look into that. And someone was like, nursing, you can be a physician's assistant, right? Because you already have a degree. And I go, ooh, I'll do that, right? And then I took a psychology class, and I was like, this is where I need to be. This is my calling. And so I was going to be a marriage and family therapist. So I went into a master's of counseling psychology program. And I have a mentor, Dr. Paul, and he had started a forensic psychology program. And I was almost done. There was some bad choices involved in there because I was working for a company while I was doing financing. I quit moving furniture. Now I'm doing financing for a home improvement company. And this guy was like, we're going to get rid of them and you can run the thing. And he was losing the company and I knew it. But I was scared to like do my internship for the MACP. And then Dr. Paul was like, do the forensic program. So I switched and I got my master's in forensic psychology. So I started that in 2008. In 2010, I finished it, right? And then I started my doctoral program. Because at that point, right, my favorite word in recovery is possible, right? Things are possible, right? If I suit up and show up and do my best, it's not about success and failure, right? It's about self-will or God's will. So I know if I do my part and I do my best and throw my all into everything, if it doesn't work out, that's not where my higher power wants me to be, right? So Dr. Paul was like, do this. I go, okay, I'll do the forensic psychology. That sounds really cool, and I thought it was really interesting, And then he was like, you're going to get your doctorate anyway, right? And I was like, yeah, that's what I'm going to do. Damn straight, I'm going to be a doctor. When I was a kid, they'd be like, what do you want to do when you grow up? Smart little kid, right? I'd be like, I want to be a lawyer or a doctor, right? And it wasn't like a medical doctor is what I pictured, but I thought, yeah, doctor's doctor, man. They'll still call me Dr. Smiley, no matter what doctor it is, And I go, yeah, I'm going to be fucking Dr. Smiley. That's what I'm going to do. So I set out to do it, and I started in like 2010, and I finished all my classes, and I got fortunate with my internship. I have a clinical supervisor. I still call her that, even though we haven't worked together in a couple of years. And she taught me everything I know about being a psychologist and a therapist. And I learned everything from her. Like, we're like family now.
So we're pretty much done here, but there is something that I kind of want you to talk about a little bit, right? I know out of all this cool stuff you've done, all the hard work that you've done, there are two people that really bright you up when you talk about, right? And so how has it been to be able to be a father in recovery,
right?
And not be that negative influence that your father was?
Thanks for asking me that, Adam. And I never imagined that for myself, right? They talk about a life beyond your wildest dreams, and I got clean, and I was like, women, money, right? Travel, like all these fancy things came into my head. I go, I don't know, I dream pretty fucking big, man. Like, life beyond my wildest dreams, that's going to be huge. I never even thought about kids, but I just did like the next right thing, right? I met their mom, and then we moved in. Well, I moved in with her almost right away. That's a different story, right? Yeah, right. Yeah. She's like, I'm sick. Can you come take care of me? Well, everything I own fit in a backpack. I was on a friend's couch because I got thrown out of sober livings for breaking the rules, which was don't have women over. So I was sleeping on a friend's couch, and I put on my backpack, and I went over to take care of her, and I never left, And so it was just like do the next right thing. It just occurred to me that I should propose. Then it occurred to me that we should get married, right? And then it occurred to me that we should have kids, and I never imagined that for myself, But it changed my life. Best thing that ever happened, right? When my daughter was born, it was like just love at first sight, man, And I never ever, so I was 40 when my daughter was born and 42 when my son was born. And I never thought of that. I was so selfish. All I ever wanted was things for me, right? Money, property, and prestige. That's all I cared about. I didn't care about like being a father or like raising children or whatever. And it's difficult sometimes because I'll be like, that's like, I'll tell them that's number 2,832 things that my dad would have punched me out for, Because they're mouthy, right? And like, I think like instinctually I'll like give them the look that my dad used to give me, right? Because it's ingrained. So I'll like give them and they just laugh at me, right? That's how it's different. They're like, Dad, I know that look, like whatever. And they just laugh, And it's like, I parent for the long haul. I learned a lot about parenting through my education and stuff. And luckily my ex-wife and I are on the same page with all parenting. I co-parent very well. We co-parent well. Yeah. And so we agree on like how to parent and stuff. And it's always for the long haul. So I'll be like, son, when you leave the bathroom, can you please turn off the light? 80 times later, son, please turn off the light, Because my dad he told me once. Yeah. That's it. I never got told twice. bam, I told you to turn that light off, right? And I don't ever want to, I've never put my hands on my children, right? I never put hands on anybody except for my first wife, or, the fights or whatever in jail, stuff like that. But you know what I mean? Like that. And I just parent differently, and I stay pretty calm. And I just try to talk to them like, I would want someone else to talk to them, So I do pretty good. I advocate for my children. I'm on their side. I remember that all the time. Like, they come first above all else. So it's the greatest thing I've ever done is become a father. It defines my life.
Awesome. Well, Dr. Smiley, I want to thank you. What an honor and a privilege it was. And
Thank you, gentlemen.
we appreciate you coming down and doing this podcast with us.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Staring at this man in the mirror, I see him often here. Wipe my tears. Only if you knew what I was going through. Only if you walked it in my shoes.
Looking at the skylight, thinking of my life like looking for the right state of mind to get my time right. I just hope my time's right. Lost up in the limelight, but you'll never know unless you walked up in my shoes.
As someone who struggled with addiction in the past, how does it feel to be able to give hope to others who are still struggling now?
It's such an honor to be able to hear other people's experiences of life, to see how when faced with the very thing that was sent to destroy you, kill you, and take you out forever didn't, but rather you have been given a second chance to give hope and be a light for those who are still in the dark. So don't be afraid to share your message to the world. You never know whose life you might be saving.